Greetings, brothers and sisters. So this is the UFO thing with Barack Obama. And this, started off this stuff. I covered a little bit yesterday with Biden. But he was on the Late Show with, I don't know, that dude, James Corden. And he had these few things to say about UFOs.
When it comes to aliens, there's some things I just can't tell you on air.
When it comes to aliens, there's things I can tell you off air. So why is that? Because it's either classified or it isn't, right? If it's classified, you can't say anything about it. If it's not classified, then what's the problem, right? There's things I can't tell you on air. I can tell you off air, but not on air. So that's just bizarre in itself.
But what is true, and I'm actually being serious here, is
what is true, and I've talked about this quite a bit. If you watch my videos on this, when people say over and over again, this is the truth, and I tell the truth, I just talked about with Don Lemons, where you have people over and over in the media saying, yeah, this is the truth, this is the God's honest truth, to be honest with you, these things. And if you have to say that, that implies that everything else you say is a lie, right? No, now I'm being serious. Now I am actually telling you the truth, because I'm saying I'm telling you the truth. Before I was lying, but now I'm telling you the truth.
Is that there's footage and records of objects in the skies that...
There's objects in the skies, footage of objects. There is movies of objects out there. This is what he can tell you on air, which has been disclosed.
We don't know exactly what they are. We can't explain how they moved, their trajectory.
So, this is something that's been well known, and they've released some of this. Trump released some of this. But this set off a firestorm and was asked, Joe Biden, who ran, I covered this yesterday, he ran away from the question. And I'm going to give you a little bit more information about UFOs, like all this stuff. But first, there's these news stories about it. Pentagon UFO footage and Obama's curiosity ratcheted up expectations for big reveal. The so-called government disclosure is now the great white hope for UFO enthusiasts who feel like this subject has been unfairly derided. And so, disclosure is the big word. The UFO people who are really into aliens and UFOs, are waiting for the government to validate them. And I've talked about this in the truth community. The government sucks and is, in its essence, a lying institution. They're never going to tell you the truth, no matter what it is. Even when they're telling you the truth, they're not telling you the truth. It's just the way, the tonation of it, right? They'll find a way to be deceptive no matter what. It's not the government, it is the controlling system, obscurantism. I've talked about this before. The Whispers from the Brighter World messages in Heartfulness Babaji talks about obscurantism, right? Where there's this, history of people who lie about everything, or just, half-truths, and they use information and the withholding of truth to control people, and the origin of the species. And I'll get more into this in future videos, talking specifically about the true origin of our species, but more importantly, what is our purpose here now? Because they don't tell you that, right? You don't get that from religion. You don't get that from your government or history, any of these things. Why are you here? Like, what are you doing here? Like, why am I here? What's my purpose? Like, why am I on planet Earth? There is a purpose, and science would like you to believe, and the mainstream media would like you to believe, it's just random. You have no purpose. Go out and party, right? Fight for your right to party. But the other piece to this is the great white hope, which is a bizarre phrase here in every possible way, because that refers to this guy, Jack Johnson. He was the boxing champion from 1908 to 1915. And so this guy was one of the first black athletes, and he was beating up white guys. And so, this was a different time in the 1900s, right? 1908. This is, just right before the Depression. And so they kept on bringing in white guys to beat him. Like then they called it the Great White Hope. They were hoping some white guy would beat him up, would take the title away from him because they didn't like a black guy holding the title. So what in the world are you using this in this MSNBC article? Why is that the Great White Hope for UFO enthusiasts? The whole thing is just bizarre. Like, why would that be what you would use as a phrase there? It just doesn't make any sense. But the media sucks. UFOs are about to make their way to the U.S. Senate. Here's what we know. The U.S. Senate's full of liars, and, that's what we know. You're not going to get the truth from them. Why do you, I'm always stunned by people who are on the fringe. UFO enthusiasts are on the fringe. Alien hunters are on the fringe, right? People in the truth community are on the fringe. I've been on the fringe for so long, I'm on the fringe in terms of the Heartfulness organization. I'm on the fringe in terms of being an American and, being in the truth community. I'm just somebody who's like outside the normal range of whatever it is, right? And I have zero interest in being validated by the beast. In fact, if I did, it would probably cause me a great deal of anxiety. Like, why are they doing that? I have zero, interest in being validated by the system, the government, or the media, or any of these things. In fact, if they did that, it would probably freak me out, right? And so, looking for validation from the power system when you are talking about the power system as being negative, right, would be impossible, especially when we're talking about obscurantism, where they are, a big part of their power is withholding information. What we do know about aliens historically is there's been lots of evidence that we know, like we can say is factual evidence of the presence of extraterrestrial type of life here. There's UFOs in paintings, there's objects and, things in architecture, cave paintings by primitive people. And so 5,000 years ago, there was everybody knew that there were so-called sky people or space people, depending on where you were in the world, that these pyramids were built. And this has been validated by the Whispers from the Brighter World messages that talked about how these pyramids were interplanetary relay stations. It was a way for them to know how to land when they came here on Earth, right? To navigate around the Earth. There was pyramids built at the same time all around the Earth. A technologically superior group of people, and wherever they were, group of higher developed, beings or whatever it was, than we are able to do ourselves. Like we could not recreate the pyramids. And then there's objects and things. You can find these, everywhere. There's, why would why would there be a sculpture of an astronaut from 4,000 years ago, right? Like, why would that be? Unless, the people who were there understood what was happening. Like, they understood that there was these space people. It's been historically documented by cultures all around the world. And then there's the genetic manipulation things that I've been talking about in recent videos. I talked about this maybe a month ago. It's interesting. It's coming up in the mainstream, again, being ahead of the curve here. And so with all of the information that's out there, and what appears to have happened, that there was some genetically created slaves, which is, what these extraterrestrials left behind, and they just bailed on the planet for the most part. Wherever they were stationed, whatever they were doing here, they just took off about 5,000 years ago and then left the sort of slave population to fend for itself, which is what, and we've done a great job of that. And then there's this mess that was left. But in terms of the information that they're going to give you, it's going to be nothing like that because they already know. Like the people in power, they already know these things. There's this information that's passed within this, secret societies and things from these different groups. So when they come out and say they're going to finally tell you the truth or they're going to disclose information, it's never going to be the full truth. And they're going to use it to manipulate you in some way or another. And so, this is just Obama being provocative and saying things, giving little hints of stuff, and then Joe Biden running away from it. So let's, we've got a bunch of things to get into here. Let's move on to Saturday Night Live. So Saturday Night Live, which I've been documenting, is now a show completely about pushing a, social agenda. and they had Little Nas X on, and he did his, thing, with his, music. There was this sketch I haven't watched yet called Making a Man, and it appears that women are putting together a man. I know what they're going to say. They're going to be mocking, well, I'll just, click on this, right? This is the man, and these women, these goddesses, are making the man.
But he wants the team working on Human Woman to take a look first. And is this final?
So you can see that the women are saying that, man is created in an inferior way. Like, this is just, typical Saturday Night Live stuff, right? Dividing people, into, in this case, sexes.
I see you went with one huge toe instead of 5.
Not a funny premise, and just a way, another way of pushing this agenda that they have, right? So I want to talk about the cold open, the beginning of the show, which is supposed to be, funny, like extra funny, and just how much a failure Saturday Night Live is.
We went from doing very weird shows at home to terrifying shows in person.
And so this is like a year, this is the season finale, and they're supposed to come out with some sort of funny thing here, right? And, it started off and they were talking about what a weird year it is, and they're just going hard on the laugh track, and there's no jokes here. There's nothing funny. There's nothing that, anybody who's not laughing superficially, you have people who laugh superficially, right? And everyone has to laugh. Sometimes you have to give somebody a mercy laugh or a fake laugh because it would be uncomfortable if you don't. People will try to be funny or tell a story and it sucks, and you're put on the hook to sort of give them superficial mercy laughs, right? Just so that you don't humiliate them by your silence. Which, I don't always do. Like, sometimes I'll just stare at somebody. Like, why are you making me give you a mercy laugh? I'll just, like, stare at them and open my mouth, like, which is kind of messed up. But, I mean, it's this social protocol that people, come out with some crappy story or, some bad joke, and they put you on the hook to give them some mercy laugh, right? And then there's just superficial laughter where people think something's funny because it's Saturday Night Live, and they're too, they don't really have real emotional reactions because they're too messed up internally. So they give you these laughs, right? They laugh at something, even though it's not really funny to them, but they just, they're too tight and too wrapped up in their own, sheepledom to understand what's funny or not. But there's no real funny jokes here. This is not humor.
Everyone else was fleeing New York, but Lauren was like, we should go back for comedy.
See, that's not a funny joke. Lorne Michaels isn't funny. He's the guy who runs Saturday Night Live. So these are not jokes.
This is what rehearsals looked like.
So, again, them in their triple masks, right?
And this is what the writer's room looked like.
Again, so it's just laugh tracks, because those aren't jokes, right? That's not funny. Like, it's not, especially now in 2021, where things are getting more and more real. Things are coming to the surface. It's a time for big things. And this was, this is a bad sketch going back, 10 years. Like, Saturday Night Live was funnier 10 years ago, and it wasn't funny then, right? And so you have this, when you look back at Saturday Night Live, you're like, oh, that wasn't really that funny, right? There's not that much comedy that Saturday Night Live produced over the years that's, timeless, that would stand the test of time. They've had some funny cast members over the years, and some funny characters, and some funny sketches that are still funny today. But for the most part, it's not. But Saturday Night Live now is just about either social agenda, pushing some sort of, they have some kind of pervy, pedo sketches and jokes, pushing a social agenda, and not being funny. Like, just, they don't have comedy anymore.
I remember there were so many COVID precautions that if I wanted to hug anyone, I had to pull them into a closet and do it in the dark, away from the authorities.
So you broke the rules and you don't really believe in science, right? All these liberal people say they believe in science, but she's saying she broke the rules in one of the worst ways, because having that kind of contact in an enclosed place like a closet and, hugging somebody would be how you were most likely to pass the disease along. All the masks and things are just for show then, right? She's admitting she doesn't believe in the science, and then this other character says the same thing.
I remember hearing that if you can hold your breath for 10 seconds, then you don't have COVID. And I did that so much because I believe in science.
See, no, you don't. So you guys, there have been some of the worst pushers of, Fauci and the powers that be's agenda. Saturday Night Live has been brutal about it. And now they're coming out and saying they were secretly breaking the rules and believing pseudo conspiracy theory science, right? And so, I mean, these aren't jokes, and they're undermining all of their agenda right there, all the stuff they're pushing.
We were in it together. Everyone was there for each other no matter what.
Sorry, Pete, is that a green screen?
No.
Again, these are supposed to be professional comedians. That's just like such a lame joke. And they're just, I didn't cover all of it. And they're all like that. I couldn't even watch the whole thing, right? I had to skip through it because it's not only not funny, but it's, hard to watch when somebody's so bad at what they're supposed to be doing. They're struggling, They're doing the opposite. I've talked about that. They literally, suck that feeling of wanting to laugh out of you, right? It just, it's anti-laughter. And then most of this, or all of it, there was this, the underlying message was how brave they were to come out and do their jobs, come out with COVID and put on a show. Like it's some, astronomically hard thing that they're doing and brave thing when so many people are out there working, wearing masks for 8 hours a day or even longer, right? And kids are going to school and all these things. And these guys, show up for a show once a week wearing double masks, and they're talking about how brave they are. It's Saturday Night Live bringing suck to a new level. So let's move on to Chrissy Teigen here. The rise and fall of undercover bully Chrissy Teigen. Just a brief update of this thing. Now, I've covered Chrissy Teigen over the last couple of years, and she made a big revelation back in November or whatever it was, January, sometime in the past, 8-9 months or something. She said that she was drunk and she's an alcoholic. And so her claim to fame was that she was a minor league celebrity, or, a model, married to a singer, right? And she got on social media and she was saying things that were outrageous that nobody else would say. And there's always these, especially women, they prop up who say things outrageous, but it's not really outrageous. It's not truther stuff. It's not like real stuff. It's just, kind of embarrassing type of whatever, And so she would say things other people wouldn't say. But it turns out she was drunk. She said she started drinking sometimes around 11 o'clock and she would wake up at like 10, right? She was drinking and drunk the whole day. And she said this had been going on for years, and her outrageous behavior was just her being a drunk, right? A drunken skank. And, now they're calling her a bully and other things. But what's really funny here is the mainstream media, which shows you how bad the mainstream media is, especially the left-leaning mainstream media, and Hollywood, and the sheeple that worship Hollywood, celebrities, propped her up because they thought she was some, talking truth to power. She's no brainiac when she's sober, but she was drunk, right? She's like some drunken barfly that says offensive things because she's drunk. She wasn't, there was... And now it's caught up to her, the cancel culture. But in reality, it just exposes the sheeple that love Hollywood. It exposes the media and Hollywood itself as being complete frauds because they went along with this, right? Prince William calls learning of Princess Diana's death his saddest memory. And this is significant because it seems like the royal family is unraveling because of the curse of Diana. like her death and the way that they treated her and her popularity, and it being 2021, may bring down the royal family. At least it's going to, be on the ropes after this all plays out. Pregnant Meghan Markle's overcame suicidal impulses for fear of hurting Harry, says in documentary. She seems to be sort of a very manipulative person, but it says Meghan Markle's didn't act on suicidal impulses while pregnant with her son because she didn't want Prince Harry to be hurt by the loss of another woman in his life. The thing that stopped her, this is him talking, the thing that stopped her from seeing it through, so she was seriously contemplating suicide, according to what she told him, was how unfair it would be to me after everything that happened to me and my mom, and to now be put in a position of losing another woman in my life with a baby inside of her, our baby. So while she was pregnant, she says she was contemplating committing suicide. Like, how messed up is that? I mean, I imagine that happens quite a bit, but, everything about this is hard to, whatever. This is a hard thing to decipher because of all the liars. Martin Bashir apologizes to Prince William and Harry, saying he loved Diana. Now, I don't like Martin Bashir. He's really superficial. I don't like listening to him talk, and I don't think he's a good person. But he's not at fault for Diana's death, right? What appears to be happening here is, Diana was extraordinarily popular around the world. And this is a very jealous group of attention-seeking, people in the royal family. Very, narcissistic and very vicious. And she was the star, and everyone loved her more than the royal family, loved her more than the queen. And then she was mistreated in so many ways, right? Because of that, and because, Charles loved another dude, Camilla Parker Bowles, and didn't really love Diana. And whatever Diana's faults were, she was more sensitive, and she ended up having an eating disorder and mental issues. Maybe acted out in a way that the firm and the royal family murdered her. I think that's probably the best guess in this, situation. And so that has nothing to do with him in this interview. Yeah, he exploited her. Yeah, he's a piece of crap. But it's the royal family. And you got two sons, like you got two kids who at least on some level love their mom. No matter how bad they are as people, there's an attachment there. Especially you see with Harry, who claims that he was using drugs and got depressed and had all these negative feelings because of her death. And now they're adults and they have, voices. William's going to be the king, possibly. And, Harry is out there going rogue. And you can say, all right, it's all an act. But this doesn't help the royal family. Bringing up Diana doesn't help the royal family. Because the more they talk about her, the more they have to talk about the royal family and the firm's mistreatment of her. And then the royal family just sucking, across the board. And so this could be something that brings down the royal family. And it's on the ropes anyway because, it's just that time, right? It's time for things like that to be left in the past. And they've been so sucky. I've talked about this in recent videos. But hopefully this will develop into more and more people. It's the perception of the people of the royal family. Once the mob turns on them, it's over. Speaking of crappy kings, LeBron will play Sunday, does not face quarantine, missed games for violating league protocol. And so what this is about is the NBA wouldn't allow players to be involved in large gatherings. And if they violated the protocols of their COVID restrictions, they were, they had to miss, in some cases, like 2 weeks, and it was like 5 days in other cases. But they all had to miss some time, and they ended up missing games. And so this is LeBron James and Drake and Michael B. Jordan, and they're all a part of this selling some sort of tequila brand, and they got together, and this was not appropriate, and he should miss the game that's going to air today on Sunday, but he's not because he's LeBron James. And so here's a guy, the reason I'm talking about this, who has more privileges than anybody in the NBA. He's against privileges, right? People talk about white privilege and white male privilege, but he has celebrity privilege and being the top athlete, and He's a billionaire, has $1 billion contract with Nike, and has just, money privilege and all these things. And in the NBA itself, he is always given calls, right? He has, more influence on the game than other stars even. He's the number one influencer where he gets the benefit of the doubt, and he literally tells the officials what to do. Over and over again, you'll see it. I have a couple examples of this from the recent Warriors game. So here's an example of this. This is Jordan Poole, and he's a second-year player for Golden State, somebody who doesn't have much status in the basketball world, the NBA basketball world, in terms of his ability to get calls and things like this. The NBA is entertainment like all sports, and so they want to influence the outcome of these contests because they're real games that are, they play a game, but it is manipulated, right? Just like everything else, to get the maximum financial benefit and to build brands and things like this. And so the players have different rankings of status, LeBron James being the top in terms of his ability to receive special treatment. Stephen Curry, who was playing for the opposite team, also received special treatment. But LeBron receives more special treatment and has more influence on the outcome of the game than any other basketball player. This play illustrates that. Here's Jordan Poole cross over this defender here, and then he's going to go for a dunk, and LeBron James is going to foul him, pretty obviously, and they're just not going to call it because it's LeBron James.
Jordan Poole, beautiful crossover, tried to jam it. Ball not.
So when you see it that way, it's like, well, it's pretty far off, and it's hard to see if he actually fouled him. So then we can see it here, where you can see he obviously did foul him.
Just for the move.
So you can see by the way his body went back here that it's a pretty obvious foul. He's just, this is something that the refs would look for, how the body is affected by having contact with somebody else. And so LeBron comes across here. He might have gotten the ball, but he clearly hits his body. You can see that again here. So he comes up. We can slow this down a little bit. See, and he's seems to hit him in the head there with his shoulder. See, his body's hitting his body here and knocks him backwards, and he's flying that way. There's a pretty obvious foul, and the announcers...
Just for the move. And he got fouled.
And so the NBA is structured to give preferential treatment for the money that you make and the level of star that you are. And the bigger star, the more preferential treatment you get, the more favorable outcomes you'll get. And the officials will basically cheat for you. The league will cheat for you. And on top of that, the players cheat themselves, right? LeBron will cheat, and he will do things that he knows he can get away with. And so he's somebody who's exercising his privileges over the other players. And he complains, and he gets the refs to change their mind. I'll show you some of that in a second. But this is the whole NBA. They all do this, right? They're all into this, and yet they're out there complaining about the police and unfair treatment in the world, right? And yet they are into it when they're getting the benefit of it. And they're trying to work the system and game the system. And I'll explain this because it's very prevalent in the NBA. And the hypocrisy is off the charts. So here's a very prevalent example of this. This is Dennis Schroeder. He's LeBron James' teammate. Here's LeBron. And here's Draymond Green. And in the NBA, they have what's called a continuation foul. They have it in all levels of basketball. And that's where you hear someone say, and one, right? Where they are getting fouled at the same time that they're going up for a shot. And so when that happens, you get foul shots or the basket and an extra foul shot, the and one. And so in this case, Dennis Schroeder's going to get fouled by a reach-in foul by Draymond Green, who's here. It's long before he's about to shoot. And what happens is the players always try to work the officials. All of them cheat. They all come over and they say, no, I was in the act of shooting, lying. They're all liars, right? Actors. They're liars and actors. And so let me show you the play first.
Well, the shot clock's down to 4.
So here's the foul, right? He is not in the act of shooting, right? He wasn't going to shoot this shot here. This guy's, this is a taller player, Andrew Wiggins, and he has no way of getting the ball into the air. It's obviously a foul before he's in the act of shooting, which means the team gets the ball out of bounds and Draymond Green gets assessed a personal foul. So those are the rules. And that's what happened. That's reality, right? That's what should happen. That's what's fair. That's how the game's played. And so what's going to happen here is
Schroeder drives on Wiggins. And a foul.
So he gets fouled, right?
He'll take it on the side.
And so he said they're going to take it out on the side, right? So that means that, the officials ruled and made the proper rule. Dennis Schroeder puts up his hands and say, no, I was shooting, because he's a liar. This is him cheating and lying, and he just does what everyone else does. It's a league of liars and cheaters because he's trying to game the system, right? Like imagine being a referee and you're constantly being worked by these players complaining and pretending something happened when it didn't. And these guys are all social justice people. This is being a complete bad person and manipulating the system. And so, and what happens was, this is where LeBron James comes in and he shows his power because they reverse the call. And it's because, let's listen to this.
Initially, Josh Tiven said it was on the floor, but talked with his fellow officials. They changed it to the act of shooting.
No, he got bullied by LeBron James. No, he got bullied by LeBron James. No, he got bullied by LeBron James into asking.
So what they're saying there was originally called, on the floor, which means he wasn't in the act of shooting. And this guy, Jeff Van Gundy, who's an announcer who is a little bit more of a truther than the rest of them, he says, yeah, LeBron James bullied the officials into making the wrong call.
No, he got bullied by LeBron James.
And LeBron's constantly doing this. And so not only do they give him special treatment, not calling a foul when he obviously plowed over Jordan Poole earlier in the game, which is significant because they won by 3, and here's 4 points right here, right? This is the difference in the game between the Lakers winning and the Warriors. And I would say, well, that's unfair, but the Warriors are cheating. Stephen Curry cheats, kicks his legs out. They all cheat, right? They all do these things. I'll explain more in a second, but I have one more example of this. But in this case, LeBron James went in and told the officials, no, you got it wrong. And all the players do it, but they listen to him. Like he has some sort of, they call him the king, and I don't know if he's, Freemason or what his status is in the order of things, but he has more privileges and gets more special treatment than any of the stars in the league, in a league that's based in special treatment, where there's unfair treatment based in the level of where you are as a person. It's the most hierarchical system of any sport. And these guys are these guys are out there talking about social justice when they're lying and cheating and working the officials, gaming the officials. I went to school with people who were prison guards, and they said the prisoners are just always at you. They're always complaining, they're always being victims, and they're always trying to play some sort of an angle and work the system. And this is what's happening here. They're all cheating, right? And I'll talk about some of the, ways that cheating has been, a part of a structural aspect of the NBA in a second. Let's go to this other play, though. So this guy, Juan Toscano Anderson, is, again, a second-year player or first-year player who doesn't have a lot of clout and status. He's on the bottom part of the pyramid of the NBA power structure. Here's LeBron James, who is in the capstone, right, in the apex. He's going to drive, and LeBron James is going to be, is going to draw a charge. The officials are going to say he charged. And it's going to be reversed because it's obvious that it didn't happen. But even more than that, LeBron lies and cheats and tries to say he was hit in the mouth even though he wasn't. And he does this all the time. Like at the end of the game, he laid on the floor and pretended he got hit in the face. Like he always does these things. Like he's an actor and a liar. But here, let's watch this.
Curry looking. Toscano Anderson driving, layup. Offensive foul. James draws the charge.
Offensive foul, James draws the charge. But they end up challenging it because it's obviously not that.
Challenging this. And that's a block.
So Jeff Van Gundy rightly says it's a block, and then they're going to reverse it, right? So the officials go and look at the replay, but they should have never called that a charge in the first place. It's only because they're so hesitant to call fouls on LeBron James. And look, he's got his arms spread out like, look, whoa, what happened? He knew that he didn't get there in time. For someone to draw a charge, they have to get their feet set and be in defensive position to where the offensive player is trying to run through them. And sometimes it's really close to call. It could go either way. But this is one where LeBron gets there late and then jumps up, right? He pretends. Let's watch that again here. And so he's going to come right here. And LeBron James has to get in front of him. He has to be outside of that circle because if he's inside, he can't take a charge. And so he's got to be outside of the circle. He has to be set, and he doesn't do that, right? And so he comes in. He's clearly off to the side. He's on an angle, and he's not in front of him. And he jumped in. It's not. He wasn't there in time. It's clearly a block, right? They reversed it. So also, this is going to be the most important piece here. You can see that Juan Toscano Anderson elbow is in. The elbow with the yellow neoprene sleeve on it is nowhere near James's jaw. Like you can see it. I'll show you it again here. So watch Juan Toscano Anderson's elbow here. I'm going to go back. And you're going to see that as he drives to the basket, his elbow's nowhere near James's face. It just doesn't come up anywhere near. It doesn't hit him in the jaw because that's what James is going to lie and pretend happened. So I'm in the editing process, and I thought I would show you this from a different angle because it's important. So it's going to sound like I'm repeating myself, but I'm just adding this extra angle here so you know what I'm talking about. But then James jumps up in the air and pretends he gets hit in the face because he's a liar and an actor, right? Like that's this is him pretending he gets hit in the face. And then he's going to do this later. He's going to continue that lie because you don't take a charge and jump up in the air, right? So he jumps up in the air and he's like pretending he got hit in the face. And he puts his arms out like, hey, he fouled me, right? Like, I'm the king. You can't do that to me. I'm privileged. And so they reverse the call. But watch what LeBron tries to, fake and act and lie to the official.
Well, Steve Kerr wins.
So LeBron James is looking at the official with sad little puppy dog eyes. He's pretending he's holding out his elbow saying he got hit in the face by the elbow.
Wins the challenge. James thought Toscano Anderson had a little bit of an elbow.
And he's like, he hit me in the jaw. You missed the call. Even after they reversed the call because he got caught cheating. And so here's what actually happened. So he's coming in. Here's his elbow. And here's James' face. Right? And he's claiming the elbow, which just because his elbow's in, they would never call that. It would be if his elbow was angled out. Like if his elbow was, used as a way to clear space for him. But his elbow's straight up and down here. And so they would never call that anyway. But he misses James' face altogether. See, his arm's here. So his elbow's already passed by James' face. You can see James' beard on the other side of his elbow. So there's a couple inch gap there. And so see, his arm is here. If his arm hits him, it doesn't matter. But it doesn't really. This is James acting and faking, right? And see, it doesn't hit him. And then he jerks his head back and falls backwards on purpose to pretend he got hit, right? His arm is actually fouling him. Like he's hitting his arm here. He clearly wasn't there in time. And he's flying around like he's got his mouth open, like he's starring in a Good Mythical Morning video with his ghoul hole open, right? As he falls backward and acting, trying to game the system. So here's from the other angle, which we already saw. His elbow just isn't anywhere near James's jaw. I'll show you that again with the film here. Watch Juan Toscano's sleeved elbow here. And you can see in James's jaw, it's nowhere near it, right? It doesn't come anywhere near his jaw. It's by 6 or 7 inches away from his jaw, maybe even a foot. And so clearly he didn't hit James at all. And so James is a liar and a cheater. And then he comes out later and he points to his jaw and he points to his elbow, pretending he got hit in the face because he's a liar and an actor. And, you know, even the announcer says he clearly doesn't hit him, even though James was pretending he did.
Wins the challenge. James thought Toscano-Anderson had a little bit of an elbow.
No, it didn't touch him. I showed it over and over again. It wasn't anywhere close to him. And so James is a liar and an actor and a cheater. But worse than that, he is a social justice hypocrite. And I'm going to talk about the whole NBA in a second because it's, you know, it's not just him. He's a part of a culture that's in sports that far exceeds just basketball and James. It's all over sports. And since it's all over sports, it's all over our culture. And it's cheating and gaming an advantage and ultimately getting special privileges for yourself. So this game between the Lakers and the Warriors was the highest rated game of the season. So the NBA changed their format to have 4 teams in a playoff sort of a play-in series to get into the playoffs. And the Warriors, because of youth and injuries, and the Lakers, because of injuries, ended up being, instead of at the top of the Western Conference, they had to be in the play-in game, and they had to play each other. And I watched the game, and it was a good game in terms of basketball, but there was a lot of cheating. There was a lot of this kind of stuff because it's always there, and it's always there with James. And James has been one of the most vocal social advocates. Well, first of all, the reason why this game was one of the best rated games is because the NBA has lost a lot of viewership because of their social justice campaign, right? And you had all these players last year wearing shirts, names on their shirts like Liberation and Justice. Justice was said over and over again. But there's no justice in basketball because it's a rigged sport with a rigged system. And so let me get into it here with LeBron James. But again, this is for everyone. So LeBron James was just criticized on Twitter for going after an officer who shot a young woman who was trying to stab another woman. And so he got blasted on social media and it caused problems for him and the NBA. But he's crying for justice. And here he is doing everything in his power to make sure the truth and what should happen doesn't happen, using his influence over the officials, using his power to influence the outcome of the game. So he got the officials to conference and overturn a call and call something that was a shooting foul, call something that was not a shooting foul, a shooting foul. And even Jeff Gundy said he bullied the officials into changing the call. And I've seen him do it over and over again. And so, again, this is bigger than LeBron James, but he is, you know, someone who calls himself the king. And he got a tattoo on his back that says Chosen One. I've said this in so many videos, is the ultimate in privilege. It's saying that by your genetics, it's the most racist. I mean, it's beyond racist. I don't know what you would even call it. But it's saying that you have superior genetics and you're born to rule. That just based in who you are as a genetic person, the family you're born into, you should be at a higher place with more privileges than other people. It's the ultimate in anti-justice, right? LeBron James saying he wants justice, but he really doesn't because, again, it's behavior. Like when he has the power, he expects privileges. He demands special treatment. So he got the foul on Dennis Schroeder overturned, and that resulted in 2 points that the Lakers didn't deserve. And then he faked like Juan Toscano-Anderson hit him in the face and that he deserved to be called for an offensive foul when clearly James was acting because I showed you the video evidence. And then he fouled Jordan Poole, and the officials called it a charge when clearly it wasn't. So those were 3 cases of James having power over the outcome and making it warped, making it skewed in an unfair direction towards himself. And so the officials are policemen, right? In a basketball game, in a contest, the officials are the ones who are supposed to enforce the rules. And so when James works the officials and bullies them into doing something that's unfair for him, he's doing everything that he claims he's against in terms of the police and social injustice, right? So you're either against the behavior or you're not. Either you're against the behavior in every manifestation. So yeah, police killing people is worse than something that happens in a basketball game. It's more severe. So yeah, sure. It's not the same thing, but it is the same behavior. Like it's more intense, but it's still, it's on a scale, it's on a spectrum, and it's basically the same behavior. And all these pro athletes expect preferential treatment. But even more so, what you have in, society in terms of sports, and anybody who plays sports knows this, at a very young age, your coaches are teaching you to game the system, how to cheat and get away with it, how to do things when the refs isn't looking, how to, game the system in one way or another. And then the higher level you go up, the more the coaches teach you how to cheat. And then there's things like steroids and performance-enhancing drugs, and they're all looking for an advantage and an angle. The Patriots cheated over and over again. Bill Belichick illegally videotaped the opposing coaches. Of course, Tom Brady had his, equipment managers deflate the football so it was easier for him to throw. I mean, all these things. We know about this, right? The vast amount of cheating. And in the NBA, here's some examples. Well, first of all, you watch the ball go out of bounds and both teams will point in their direction, right? Because they want, to somehow subconsciously, or at least, in every possible way, influence the officials to give them the ball, even if they don't deserve it. And coaches are supposed to badger the officials and work the officials, game the officials, so they get calls that they don't deserve. And this happens on in college level and high school level and all the rest of it. People are trained to cheat, trained to game the system, trained to work the officials. I mean, that's a term, work the officials, right? Get the officials to somehow give you something you don't deserve. And fans aren't any better because they will, scream at the officials when the call doesn't go their way, right? Even if they can see the video of the call being a wrong call, they'll still yell at the officials. So they want things just to go their way, even if it isn't, what should happen, if it isn't the justice thing to happen. Because people are liars and cheaters. So this goes into business and, every level of our society. People cheat and lie and steal. It's just, the level in which they're willing to do it. But in terms of the NBA, a couple of the players, and I think it started with maybe Kevin Durant, and James Harden was the worst at doing this. They had, when an opposing player would have their hands out, the defender would have their hands out, the offensive player would swing the ball around and hit the other person's arms, and the foul would be called on the defender. It was really messed up. And it was happening 20 times a game. It just happened over and over again. It slowed the game down. It made the game hard to watch. And they were just manipulating the rules. It sucked, right? Anybody watching it goes, this sucks. I would turn off the game just because it would annoy me, right? I believe that the games are rigged, and I used to play basketball, so I, watch it partially. But this cheating and gaming of the system, it became more than just that. That was just part of it. But an even, greater example of this, because it has two layers of cheating. It has a part 1 and a part 2. And so this was where jump shooters, people who were shooting a jump shot, would be up in the air. The player would be up in the air. And the defender would place their legs, they'd get in the space, the landing space of the shooter. And this would disrupt the shooter because they'd be, worried about spraining an ankle, or they'd land on the foot of the defender. I mean, it was just a bad thing, right? They could get severely injured, and, the players are worth millions upon millions of dollars in terms of attendance and viewership. If a star player gets hurt, then they're not going to, the NBA isn't going to sell out the stadiums, and they're not going to get the same TV ratings and viewership and things like this. So they wanted to protect the shooters, which was smart, which is, a good thing, because you don't want these guys getting hurt. I mean, that's, you don't want anybody getting hurt in general. So they changed the rules to make it a foul if you got into the area, if you're somewhere around where the shooter is landing, right? And that's just smart. It's a good rule. But then the offensive players, knowing that they had now an advantage, started to kick their legs out and or jump into the defender, creating the contact, and the defender would be called for the foul. So they had a cheater. The defenders were cheating by getting in the landing space of the shooter, right? And so they changed the rule, and then the offensive players then gamed the system. And so I'd like to say that LeBron James's antics and cheating cost the Warriors the win, gave the Lakers the win. But the player Jordan Poole, who didn't get the foul call against LeBron James earlier in the game, towards the end of the game in the fourth quarter, he got fouled by kicking out his feet, and clearly the foul was on him, right? But he got to shoot 3 foul shots, and, that was, 3 points he didn't deserve, right? And so there are 2 principles here at play. That human beings collectively cheat. They collectively game the system. They look for ways to go around the rules, look for ways to bend the rules. I mean, sometimes the rules might be stupid. Sometimes the rules might be oppressive. Sometimes the rules might be just out and out wrong. But the rules in general are there for everybody. And so when you game the system, you find ways to manipulate around the rules or bend the rules or break the rules. You have a criminal nature in your species, a lying criminal nature where people manipulate to gain an advantage, right? I mean, think about things like a guilt trip, laying a guilt trip on somebody and getting something you don't deserve, pretending you're sick or hurt or you've been victimized. I mean, everybody's a victim now. And when people are victims, they believe that they are getting mistreated. Then they use that feeling, they use that, that emotional feeling to justify doing wrong behaviors. I've talked about the victim stance so much in my videos. The victim stance is where everybody who does something wrong, I mean, it's universal, that when they, do something wrong, they use a victim statement, a victim stance to justify their wrong behavior, right? And the other part of this is people want privileges. They think they deserve privileges for rising up to a higher level in the economic system or becoming a powerful politician or a celebrity or all of the above. They think they deserve special treatment and they deserve to be on a higher standard than the people below them. And they want to take more and more for themselves. Just take advantage, take resources, whatever it is, take, and then whine and complain like they don't have enough. LeBron James being a prime example of this. Like if LeBron James said, yeah, I want justice, so therefore I'm no longer going to get privileges or special treatment or try to cheat and work the officials because of my standing in my place. I'm getting rid of my nickname, the King, King James, which I've cultivated and branded by tattooing the chosen one on my back, right? All of these things, because it isn't fair. So if you're a part of the privilege game and you're a part of the cheating game, then don't whine about other people that you think have more or are better at it, right? Either against the behavior or you're not. I've said this over and over again. It's very simple to understand. I talk about this so much, I just talked about it yesterday. If you're against a behavior, if you're against some people having special treatment, some people having, it doesn't matter whether it's based in race or your economic status or your religion or your, whatever it is, your sex or whatever it is. If you're saying that everybody should be treated equally, exactly the same, then that applies to you as well, right? Like everybody else wants other people to give up their privileges, but they don't want to talk about their own. Like they have privilege. LeBron James has a privilege of being a, top athlete and celebrity, and he has money privilege. And he's an endorsable, he has businesses that endorse him. He has over, he's $1 billion contract with Nike and then, all his other money. So he's a billionaire. So he has all the privileges that go with it, $1,000 million. And so you have wealth privilege and all these things. And so he's like against race privilege, but he's for his privilege, right? Because he has got more privileges than other, basketball players, other, athletes. And he's got more privileges than poor people. But those privileges are okay, right? So you understand this? Those, being treated differently or better than other people, he's not against that behavior. He's only against it based in race, historical racism. But there are so many different ways that this behavior manifests because people have privileges. Like that's just how a society like ours, like they're not against the system. People aren't against the system, which is the cause. I talked about this yesterday with Prince Harry and Oprah's Apple documentary about mental illness. They're against the symptoms. They're against the mental illness, or they want privileges and special treatment for mentally ill people, but they're not against the cause, which is the system, what I call the beast, right? And it's the same for people in the truth community, many of you, because everyone wants the system to stay, they want the system that they're 100% dependent on to be fixed to their liking. And very few people want to confront the fact that the system is responsible, or at least is encouraging so many wrong behaviors. We're all responsible for how we contribute to this, but the system pulls this out of people, right? It pulls lower behaviors. It pulls selfish behaviors, egotistical behaviors, devil-like, demon-like behaviors out of people. So what we have is a systemic problem, right? We have a system that is taking people in the wrong direction, taking them away from their soul's path, from their soul's purpose, from what it means to be a natural human being, a positive human being and fulfilling one's purpose on this planet, right? I've talked about this so much. And the heartfulness system is a system in which it helps people find their spiritual purpose and their path, connect to God internally, right? And it's a system given for this specific time in history where there's a transition between a failed system that has taken everybody in the wrong direction, right? Taken the world and humanity in the wrong direction. And then a phase where there's going to be the consequences. Like we're starting to see the consequences of this failed system. And we'll see that play out in, whatever amount of time that takes, 100 years, 200 years, 20 years, I don't know. Like it's going to be significant. And then people redeeming themselves and realizing the failure of their ways, and then getting, their consciousness expanding so they can get a clearer picture of the true nature of the human experience and what God wants from us all, and, seeing how bad the system was and each person taking responsibility for contributing to that. And then the people that are left, because there'll be reduced amount of population, will build a system that is, based in what God wants, right? The divine order, the divine system. And so, there's this transitionary period, and there needs to be a spiritual system to take people along this transition, to help people navigate this transition, and that's the heartfulness meditation. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely pointing from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.